delightful. It's delightful.
You know, I was fishing on the Great Lakes one time, and I caught a fish this big.
You get out of here. Go on, beat it.
Fishing has been a way of life in coastal cities for generations. Today, not only is it a source of income for many people, but a sport, an art, and a way of bringing people together. We often take this resource for granted, but in some coastal towns, such as Gloucester, Massachusetts, the repercussions of overfishing are becoming obvious. In the early 1800s, cod fisheries grew explosively in New England. By the late 1800s, nearly 400 ships fished out of the Gloucester ports. As time went on and technology advanced, the simple fishing town was reaching its limits. Large foreign bottom trawlers began making their appearance in the Cape in the 1950s, which led to the beginning of a cod population decrease that would soon vandalize the community. In an effort to avoid a complete extirpation and protect local fishermen who made their livelihoods fishing on these banks, regulations were passed by local and state governments. One of the first such acts passed was the federal Manginson-Stevens Fishery Conservation Act of 1976, which was more of a protection of our waters from foreign ships than a catch limit regulation. This seemed to have a profound opposite effect in protecting our fisheries, and their populations continued to dwindle. A revision to the Manginson Act came about in 1996, titled the Sustainable Fisheries Act, which aimed to avoid a tragedy of the commons situation with the New England cod. The boom in revenue following the Manginson Act was faced with a sudden decline following the SFA. In 2003, cod catches were a fifth of what they were in 1980. After a 2009 amendment to the Act, communities were in outrage. With new regulations, their days at sea were limited to just a few a year, hardly enough to make anything resembling an income. The situation in the Northeast became so urgent that in 2012 and 2013, a federal fishing disaster was declared. In such a declaration, Congress can reach out to affected communities and make federal funds available. In a 2013 meeting regarding cod fishing limits, a 77% reduction in yearly harvests was proposed and later accepted by the NOAA. It can be easy to overlook the fact that our fish populations, as well as our local fishermen, are in jeopardy. After all, we don't see this happening in our backyards. Walk into any grocery store or restaurant, and the fish options seem endless.
So he's well underway. You know, it's devastated our family. You know, sure, some of the money from the sale of my quota got my daughter through those first 2 years of college, but that money's gone. You know, now, we're contemplating, selling the house. And then where do you go? You know, you've sold the business aspects. You're selling the house now to survive. You've reduced a guy like me, you know, a family of 5 who, you know, we weren't making a killing, but we were making a living, you know.
Several bills have been proposed to help with the cod situation happening in the Gulf of Maine. H.R. 2183, the Fishing Equipment Tax Relief Act of 2017, was introduced and proposed a 7% tax cut on bait-related fishing equipment, reducing the tax from 10% to 3%. This bill is still in the introduction phase. Another bill, H.R. 1335, would benefit local communities, but lacks the environmental aspects that are necessary to protect our fish stocks. While there may be a temporary economic increase, future generations will be disadvantaged. The bill, also known as Strengthening Fishing Communities and Increasing Flexibility in Fisheries Management Act, received backlash from the then President Obama. His administration stated, "The administration strongly opposes H.R. 1335, which would amend the Manginson-Stevens Fishery Conservation and Management Act, because it would impose arbitrary and unnecessary requirements that would harm the environment and the economy." Federal agencies do not have the ability or interest to devise community-specific fishing regulations and quotas, something that is necessary in this context. Therefore, the responsibility should be upon the state and local ordinance to create these rules and ensure they are being enforced. While there are obviously ulterior motives of these communities when creating fishing limits, they are also aware of the consequences of overfishing, and there are still other regulations in place as well as quotas federally.
Yeah, I'm going fishing in the morning. I'm going fishing all day. I'm going fishing, time to quit wishing. I'm going fishing today. Gonna be outside today, breathing a deep sigh. Gonna be on the water, under the blue sky. I'm gonna take my lunch along, maybe two.